thank you for joining me. Could you tell me, Joe Biden said at Howard University last week that the biggest problem that was threatening America was white supremacy. Is that supported by facts and data?
It's hilarious, Lawrence. This is one of his favorite lines. No, it is not. When you look at interracial violence between whites and blacks and whites and blacks and whites, non-lethal interracial violence, blacks commit 87% of all interracial violence between blacks and whites and blacks. We've got this maudlin conceit going around that existing while black in America is really, really dangerous thanks to white supremacy. That's completely phony, Lawrence. It is dangerous to exist while black in America. Blacks have a much higher rate of death by gun homicide. In fact, black juveniles after the George Floyd race riots of June 2020 now die of gun homicide at 100 times the rate of white juveniles. Who's killing them? Not the police, not whites, but other blacks. And for that reason, the country will not talk about it. It turns its eyes away from a pathological inner city culture that is driving this black on black violence.
Is it a ruse? So Biden must have realized by saying this to the American public that they're all racist. Essentially, is this a ruse to try and draw in the black vote in America because he's not going to get the white vote because he's called them all a racist?
Oh, that's way too optimistic, Lawrence. Are you kidding me? Number one, he's got the black vote. Number two, he gets the white vote from the elites who feel a great rush of virtue and superiority by accusing themselves and their colleagues and their institutions of phantom racism. This is not a white supremacist country. It was a horribly white supremacist country. It treated blacks with gratuitous contempt and cruelty. But today, Lawrence, the reality is exactly the opposite. The reality today is black privilege, not white privilege. There is not a single mainstream institution in the United States, whether a university, a cancer research lab, an Alzheimer's research lab, a law firm, a media company, that is not giving massive preferences to black and Hispanic applicants and to employees. If you're a heterosexual white male in the United States today, you are at the bottom of the totem pole. You will be admitted last, you will be promoted last.
That's so true. So you would say in the diversity delusion, you spoke a lot about this, affirmative action being forced on society and certainly in universities and education, and how that created massive disparities within the society. Has this American Great Society experiment been of any benefit to America, or has it been an unmitigated disaster?
Racial preferences are an unmitigated disaster, Lawrence. They put their alleged beneficiaries at extreme disadvantage. They've depressed academic achievement among the beneficiaries of these preferences, who know that they will be admitted to selective institutions under grossly lowered standards. And here's the key. You're not helping somebody by putting him into an environment for which he is not competitively qualified. Let's take it out of race and look at gender, a phrase I hate. If the Massachusetts Institute of Technology here in the United States in Boston, one of our premier science and math skills, admitted me out of gender parity, and my math skills were a standard deviation below those of my peers who had been admitted on the basis of merit, not on the basis of trivialities of gonads and melanin, I would flounder in my first year calculus class. I would not be able to keep up because the teaching would be understandably and legitimately pitched to that of the peer average. If I'd been admitted to a school for which I was competitively qualified, I would do much better. So this idea that these preening, self-righteous college leaders that go around talking about diversity and engineer diversity through these vast racial double standards are actually hurting the alleged beneficiaries of those standards. And we are not closing the academic skills gap. It has not gone away. We have to stop making excuses for people and say everybody should meet the same standard. I despair when I hear Black leaders claim again and again, lower the standards on our behalf. What they should be saying to their communities is put in the effort and meet and beat the standards.
It shocks me, you know, from following you for many years now, to see the amount of personal threats and aggravation you have aimed at yourself when you try and speak on college campuses. And yet at the same time, Joe Biden can sit and say they're going to lock you up in chains, and he calls people my boy and stuff like that, which to me, as a standard understander of language, is open racism. He's spoken in very racist ways at the Clarence Thomas hearings and all of this stuff. Is there an element of they are the exact thing that they accuse us of?
Well, I'm not going to use the racist term because it is so overused. I would just say that their policies stink. I would say he's much more frequent in his accusation against whites. He may have made some slip of the tongue, but basically Joe Biden traffics in anti-white rhetoric, and American whites are so un-white supremacist that they just take it. They view it as completely natural and normal that white now is an epithet. We are destroying Western civilization. This civilization should not go around apologizing. It has done nothing worse than the rest of the world's cultures. I'll be ready to pay reparations in the United States, Laurence, when I see Nigeria offering reparations for participation in the transatlantic slave trade, or Japan or China for their oppression of their minoritized communities over the years. Only the West museums, and this is happening in Britain as well at Tate Modern, is going around slapping trigger warning labels on some of the greatest art that has ever been created and teaching young people to see beauty through the lens of racial grievance. That is not going on in other civilizations, and the West is not doing that to other civilizations. The Metropolitan Museum of Art is trying to cancel its Dutch Baroque Masters collection. Meanwhile, it is portraying African tribal art with utter respect and not noting the type of tribal genocide that lays behind a lot of these African pieces. We are only canceling our own culture. It is a completely suicidal instinct that defies understanding.
Do you think it might be, you know, each civilization must come to an end, and we've reached this level of affluence and leisure, and that we're able to look back at ourselves just with hatred of what we've done without any pride and optimism for the future, that we are going to have to deconstruct? Is that what you feel will happen? And that this woke, Western-hating civilization agenda will have to stream through us before we can get back on track?
Not if I can help it. I love the works of Western civilization. I live for classical music. I live for British literature. We cannot go down without a fight. But your view, Laurence, is widely shared. I talked to an oncologist for my latest book, and I said, why aren't you guys standing up and defending medicine against the specious, preposterous charge that medicine is racist? And he said, we need our jobs. We want our jobs. If we speak the truth, we will be destroyed. The entire system it will collapse in 50 years, and then it needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. What's so sickening about this, Laurence, is the people that are going around lodging these idiotic complaints about Western civilization benefit from it every single day, whether it's regards to medical science, technology, or the very concepts of equality and tolerance that they purport to be fighting in the name of. Of course, they are abusing those concepts, but Western civilization has given the entire humanity freedom from squalor, from want, and from abuse of power.
Is there something to be said for, obviously there are a multitude of different approaches to dealing with this complete cultural attack. I saw this morning that Marjorie Taylor Greene said that the use of the word white supremacist, the slur white supremacist, was analogous to the use of the N-word. It had the same amount of power, and she was immediately jumped on. Is there something to be said for what she pointed out there?
Absolutely, it is, but people get away with it. And this is again what's very odd about whites in Western civilization. They are self-canceling. They do not have any kind of desire to defend themselves against phony charges. So yes, I think it should be stigmatized, but the elites get away with it. You know, it's hilarious in the United States. Even conservatives say, oh, Joe Biden was a unifier. No, he has been using this anti-white rhetoric during the presidential campaign, in his inaugural speech, And it just rolls off our backs because we feel, yeah, that we somehow deserve it. No, we don't. Nobody living today deserves to be accused of the sins committed 200 years ago. They were real sins. They were particularly offensive in the United States context because the United States does go around pretending that it is unique among nations in its respect for equality and opportunity. But that changed. We have changed radically. And our deprivations of opportunity to blacks, to Indians, were no worse and much better than what the rest of the world has always engaged in. And let's just try holding a Black Pride or a Trans Pride march in Uganda today and see how far you get.
Absolutely. Would you say that race trumping merit an existential threat to the harmony of America? Could you just tell us a bit about the book and what you're trying to tell us all?
Yes, it is an existential threat because if we continue tearing down our standards of scientific progress, right now our science funding agencies in the federal government are handing out science research grants not on the basis of scientific accomplishment, but on the basis of race and sex. Meanwhile, China is fanatically promoting meritocracy. It is taking its most gifted students, mathematically gifted students, and throwing everything it's got at them. In the United States, we are tearing down gifted and talented programs that offer accelerated math instruction to our most gifted math students. We're saying we all have to be equal, and that is equally bad. And you're not allowed, if you're fantastically talented, you're not allowed to study even, pre-calculus until late in high school because we're hoping that underrepresented groups will catch up. Well, they don't. And meanwhile, that talented student is being held back and probably bored to tears in his school. We are destroying achievement and excellence in the name of fighting a phantasm. This is not a systemically racist society. So I address science, I address medicine, I address the arts, I address what's happening in classical music, in museums, in dance and theater, all of which are being torn down by phony charges of racism. And I explain what's going on in law enforcement in the United States since the George Floyd race psychosis, the mass collective nervous breakdown on the part of America's elites, where we are no longer enforcing the criminal law because it has a disparate impact on black criminals.